Hey class, Doug Brown here. Welcome to our last week of Homeland Security. You're doing a great job in the discussions. Thank you for all the essays, the written work. You've put a lot of work into both of those. You've gone the extra mile to share those really great discussions, to really connect with your peers, and to write some great papers on our summit. So thank you for all the hard work. As we enter our last week, it's a great discussion. Hopefully you will continue to move forward, share your thoughts, and just really go that extra mile like you have in the past throughout the rest of the time. I know you're ready for the class to be over so you can move on to other things. In some cases, you've already entered some of the other new classes that have started, and you may be entering some new ones as well coming up. So if not, thank you for all your great work. Excuse me. You've done a great job this term, and I am proud of you. So what are we doing this last week? Our objectives this week: understanding the potential of emerging threats, understand the concept of border security, understand the role and relationship of the intelligence community with Homeland Security, and understand the concept of globalization. So let's talk a little bit about emerging threats. So we see there's a lot of emerging threats, and we're not necessarily talking about public health threats here, although that could be an issue. But we talked last week about some of those different groups that are out there, the presented potential for domestic terrorism, such as the KKK. And so those are some of the threats that continue to emerge, I think, domestically. It seems that we have more threats internally, domestically, than we do externally. If you saw the news today, you saw where a member of ISIS was killed by the U.S. Forces. But they continue to, build up just because one person is killed or is no longer in the position, and someone else is going to step up, and those threats will continue to emerge from outside the United States. And that's one of the reasons that it's important for Homeland Security and the military to continue to address those threats, those emerging threats, and new groups. And so what we do see from outside the United States is that when one group folds, if you will, someone else takes their place, and we still have that potential for those new groups to come on board, and we still have that potential for an act of terrorism to affect the United States internally or externally in one way or the other. So we can't forget about the old groups, and we certainly don't need to forget about the people that were involved in them, because that could be some of the emerging threats. Some of those attacks that we saw, like 9/11, the Boston Marathon bombings, those things could certainly continue, and then affect places such as outdoor events, indoor events, the food supply. That's something to really think about, is a food supply, because it is very vulnerable when it comes to some of those threats. So those are just some of the things about when we look at the emerging threats externally. And then internally, those groups that I mentioned, such as the KKK, white supremacists, some of those that continue to build in the background, even though the federal government has a good grasp of those groups. There's probably some out there that we don't know about, or people that we certainly don't know about that's involved, and those are potential threats that could emerge as we go forward. So I think that what we will see is more domestic terrorism as we move along, and I think that may occur after this next election cycle, certainly depending after the next 4 years, depending on who becomes president. And then after that, I think some of those things will certainly emerge, because we are so polarized right now. Border security is important. We see those things about on the news about the president wanting to build the wall, and he's working on that and taking money and that sort of thing. And there's some issues there, with humane issues, humanity, if you will, that we need to consider, that I'm not happy about, that I think things are not going the way they should with regard to taking care of the people that are crossing over. Sort of a humanitarian crisis. However, border security on all our borders is important, not just for the United States, but also other countries, because what it does is, by securing the borders in one form or another, I'm not saying keep migrants out, but by by securing the borders and having some system in place, we're able to catch some of those people that have come across that are terrorists, potential terrorists, that could come into the United States and cause problems. And we know that happens. We've seen it. The Border Patrol has actually captured people in the past coming over. It's probably not in the numbers, like you hear on the news, anything like that, but it does happen. So ensuring that we have some sort of border security, not just on the southern border, not in Canada, but also the work that the TSA does and some of the other agencies to get some of those visitors that come into the United States to ensure that we do have some form of border security and protection to keep out terrorists is important. Why come? Why is that? We saw what happened in 9/11. The people that came here were from somewhere else, and they got through the security mechanism. It didn't work very well. Both externally and internally, and so the result was the attacks that we've had. And then there's nothing that we can do about the social media and those things that we get via the news. If you look at that being as a border security issue, the only way to fix that would be, to shut down some of those websites and different media that's out there, and that's a First Amendment issue. And then at the end of the day, I'm not sure that does much for us. We saw that with the Patriot Act when we have had some of our freedoms, had to give up some of our freedoms, just to stay safe. So that's something else to secure or to consider about the border is what are we willing to give, what's considered humanitarian aid, and what's considered security of the border. So I want you to think about that this week when you discuss border security, if you don't mind. The role and relationship of the intelligence community and Homeland Security. What used to happen before 9/11 is no one talked to each other. Now that still happens, but they didn't talk to each other. And I think that was one of the reasons that President Bush created the Department of Homeland Security and changed up some national intelligence a little bit. And he sort of mandated, if you will, maybe unofficially, I don't know, that the different agencies start communicating with each other. And that's why we have our fusion centers. Each state has a fusion center. Some states have more than one. And then what happens is information that comes in, they look at that, determine whether or not it's intelligence, it's usable, and they disseminate that out to the different organizations, both at the federal, state, and local, or I should say at the federal, state, and local levels. So Homeland Security investigations and intelligence works real closely with those different national intelligence agencies, the FBI. They even receive some information from the CIA, and they investigate and they try to combat, mitigate, prevent some of the different threats that we have here to the United States. So it works pretty well. That information is sent out, it's disseminated, it's looked at, and then the decision is made about whether or not they should act on that or not. Now that happens every day. We see that with the Joint Terrorism Task Force, which meets often. Some of the FBI agencies agents that work on the Joint Terrorism Task Force, as well as the state and local groups, they meet throughout the week to assess what's happening locally, statewide, and even federally, or nationally, I should say, to determine whether or not those threats needs their attention today. So that stream of information back and forth seems to work pretty well, especially with the development of the Department of Homeland Security. Are there opportunities for improvement? Absolutely. There's times that the ball gets dropped, information doesn't get shared, intelligence does not get disseminated, and then those threats are not dealt with. We saw that before with the Boston Marathon, where there was a little bit of intelligence. But keep in mind, because of our Constitution, there's a lot of that information. There's nothing they can do about it. They can watch, they can look, they can surveil, but they can't act on it until someone does something wrong. So that's something to keep in mind as well. A little bit different here, a system of government with the United States when compared to governments. Finally, let's talk about globalization. Now, I want to talk about globalization as it relates to Homeland Security. As we have globalization, products come in, there's more open borders, there's more people traveling, We have to partner on so many things, trade, etc., some of those other different countries. What that also does is it creates a risk for us. It's a threat that has to be dealt with, looked at to make sure that we don't have people coming back and forth. And in globalization, whether it's a financial system, a financial crime, or some other threat to the United States with respect to terrorism. So that's something that we really have to look at. So case in point is when we look at the Chinese telecom company. United States, the Chinese telecommunications company sold a lot of products here, but the United States felt like they were spying on us because it implanted programming or a chip in the phone systems to spy on us. And that's part of globalization. We do a lot of trade with China and other countries. And so what the United States did to deal with that threat is they said, we're not going to buy any more products. They sort of blacklisted the products, and then they issued a warrant, and the Canadian authorities arrested the president or chair of that company, or his daughter, who was highly involved and had a role in the company, in order to assess that threat and try to stop it. They dealt with this one person. So as part of that globalization, we need to think about those different threats that can affect the United States, whether it's food supply, people involved with that, telecommunications companies, any of those things that we see as part of globalization. And we've seen a few changes with that, sort of some setbacks in globalization, if you will, with the Brexit, with the issues there, with the UK trying to pull out of the European Union. So I don't think that's going to affect anything here when it comes to globalization. We're going to continue to do that trade, have those trading partners, and still have those threats or potential threats that could affect the United States because of that globalization that we are seeing. So just a few things to think about. Discussions this week. Last discussion, again, I'd like to see that strong. Make sure you connect with your peers. Don't forget to check your grammar, cite your sources, author and year, author, year before the period, not after. Make sure you put the references in there if you don't mind. And let's finish strong. We're going to do well. I'm proud of you. You're moving forward. You rocked out these 8 weeks. I can't even believe it. The 8 weeks is over. It's already over. Already done. And we had a good 8 weeks. I'm proud of every one of you. You gave it your all, gave 110%. So I'm going to check in on the discussions. I'll check back in later on during the week. If you need me, I want you to reach out, call me, send a text or email, and I'll do everything I can to help you. I hope you have enjoyed the class. I've certainly enjoyed seeing your discussions and working with you. It's been an exciting opportunity for me, and I hope that I've serviced you well. And if not, please let me know. I'm always open to criticism, making things better for you, because I want you to have a good experience. So I'll see you in the discussions. If you need me, reach out. See you later.